Good afternoon. Please be seated. Good afternoon. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm new at this. I'm the interim. Please remain standing. Good afternoon and welcome. I am Forrest Malzman, interim provost of the George Washington University and professor of political science. And on behalf of my colleagues on stage and my colleagues across the university, I am delighted to welcome all of you to the doctoral hooding ceremony in the 195th year of the George Washington University. To begin our ceremony, Millicent Scarlett, professor of music, will lead us in the singing of the national anthem.
Say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets wreaking, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave.
Now, please be seated. It is now my pleasure to introduce the president of the university. Dr. Stephen Knapp is concluding his 9th year as president of the George Washington University. Dr. Knapp leads a community of faculty, students, and staff that numbers more than 30,000 people. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming the George Washington University's 16th president, Dr. Stephen Knapp.
Provost Maltzman, deans, and distinguished members of the faculty, it's an honor to join you for this important moment in our commencement week every year. Doctoral candidates, I am delighted to be with you on this very special occasion in your lives. You will soon hold the highest degree conferred by the George Washington University, and I trust that the passion for learning and the dedication to service that have earned you this distinction will continue to motivate you as you advance into your chosen professions. Today, your names become forever linked with those of alumni who have received their doctoral hoods in years past. One illustrious example is biochemist Julius Axelrod, a son of Polish-Jewish immigrants who received his PhD in 1955, a little before most of you were born, and then went on to share the Nobel Prize in Medicine in 1970 for his groundbreaking work on the chemistry of the brain, more specifically on the role of epinephrine and other neurotransmitters. Next, let me mention Susan Schwab, a 1993 graduate of our doctoral program in public administration and international business, who currently serves as a professor of public policy at the University of Maryland. She was the United States Trade Representative from 2006 to 2009 In that role, she was the President's principal trade advisor and negotiator, as well as his chief spokesperson on trade issues. Earlier in her career, Ambassador Schwab served as Deputy Trade Representative and held positions in the Department of Commerce, the United States Senate, and the United States Embassy in Tokyo. We were honored when she traveled to Hong Kong in 2009 to participate in the university's inaugural Global Forum as keynote speaker, dazzling hundreds of her fellow alumni with an expert presentation on the global economy. Another example, Jung-Suk Kim attended Ewha Women's University in Seoul, Korea, before coming to George Washington for her doctorate in higher education administration, which she received in 1988. Dr. Kim has long been a powerful advocate for the rights of women in Korea. She served 3 terms in the Korean National Assembly, where she chaired the Special Committee on Women's Affairs and enacted laws to protect women and to advance their educational and entrepreneurial opportunities. She currently serves as president of both the Korean National Council of Women and the Center for Asia-Pacific Women in Politics, and as founder and chair of the Korean Institute for Women in Politics. Dr. Kim also served as a member of George Washington's National Council for the Graduate School of Education and Human Development from 2007 to 2013. And finally, Scott Cowan, the recently retired president of Tulane University, who earned his master's and doctoral degrees from our School of Business. During his 16-year tenure, he led Tulane through the most trying period in its history when, in August of 2005, Hurricane Katrina devastated the city of New Orleans, flooding 70% of Tulane's Uptown campus and all of its downtown health sciences campus. Dr. Cowan not only led the efforts to repair that damage, but became an extraordinary force in the revival of New Orleans. He became one of the region's strongest advocates. He worked side by side with industry and government on various commissions, and he launched a think tank devoted to improving the city's public schools. Now, in giving these examples of our doctoral alumni, I would be remiss if I failed to mention a university leader who joins me on stage today. Actually, stage right, which is house left, right at the end of the row here, is a beloved colleague of so many of us, Diane Martin, Vice Provost for Faculty Affairs, who earned her Doctor of Education degree here in 1987. Before joining George Washington's faculty in 1983 as a computer science instructor, she worked as a programmer for IBM assigned to the Apollo space project. In fact, she was part of mission control for the Apollo 8 mission, which you may recall was the first manned mission to leave Earth's orbit. During her 33-year tenure at the university, she's held a number of leadership roles, such as chair of the Department of Computer Science, director of the Cybersecurity Policy and Research Institute, and associate vice president for graduate studies and academic affairs. Dr. Martin was responsible for a number of university initiatives that have enhanced the faculty's experience both in and outside the classroom. This will be the last time Dr. Martin will be joining us at this ceremony because she is retiring in August, and I know you will join me, and I invite you to join me in thanking her for her extraordinary many years of service to the university. So, to our candidates, with the support of your families, your friends, and your teachers and mentors, you follow in the footsteps of these and thousands of other distinguished alumni. I applaud your creativity, your dedication to excellence, your commitment to serving others, and your very hard work and perseverance. And I know that as you go forward, you will continue to be guided and inspired by the intellectual curiosity that has informed your quest to this point. And I trust that wherever your future endeavors may take you, you will always regard the George Washington University as your intellectual home in this nation's capital. Congratulations and best wishes to you all.
Thank you, Dr. Knapp, for joining us this afternoon to honor our doctoral candidates. Members of the doctoral class of 2016, I am honored to welcome you to the community of scholars. According to the United States Census, you are among the roughly 3% of the U.S. population to hold this degree. Whether the rarity of the doctoral degree means that you are special or perhaps a little crazy is something I will not attempt to answer. But your accomplishment, which we honor today and on Sunday, is truly an impressive achievement. Each one of you here this afternoon has spent countless hours and dedicated enormous intellectual energy to arrive at this milestone. During the past days, weeks, and months, you delved ever more deeply into your discipline, selected and refined your doctoral research, mentored students, and finally successfully completed your dissertation or major research paper. Along the way, this academic journey took you from student to colleague. Today, you complete this transition. Whatever your next steps, you all share a common achievement and responsibility. Today, I charge you first to keep alive the enthusiasm for learning and knowledge that motivated you to pursue doctoral studies and kept you going through the many long nights and cups of coffee that brought you to this moment. I charge you to bring your intellect and curiosity to bear on the larger world of knowledge. The doctoral degree carries with it the responsibility to challenge yourself through continued study and learning. I also urge all of you to broaden your scholarly horizons. To earn this degree, you had to focus intently and often narrowly. I urge you to break apart the disciplinary box that constrains us in so many ways. By exploring new areas, you will rekindle again and again the flame of curiosity about the world of knowledge, and you will make discoveries that enlighten and improve the world. Finally, I charge you to adhere to the highest standards in your professional lives. Academic integrity is of utmost importance. Your professional lives will bring you to many decision points. I believe it is essential that you develop a personal code of ethics that underlies all you do. Very likely, those of you here today will hold positions of considerable responsibility. It will be up to you to set the bar for making principled choices and leading by example. Make good use of your degrees, make good use of your lives, and think differently. Congratulations and best wishes. Let us now proceed to the hooding of the doctoral candidates. I would like to call Charles Garris, Chair of the Faculty Senate and Executive Committee and Professor of Engineering and Applied Science, to the podium.
Thank you, Dr. Maltzman. Today, 6 schools of the university are presenting doctoral candidates for hooding. The Columbian College of Arts and Sciences, the School of Engineering and Applied Science, the Graduate School of Education and Human Development, the School of Business, the Millikan Institute for Public Health, and the School of Nursing. Join me to assist with hooding of the candidates are faculty marshals Michael King, Chair of the Department of Chemistry and Professor of Chemistry, Diane Martin, Vice Provost for Faculty Affairs and Professor Emeritus of Computer Science, and Loring Ingraham, Director of the Professional Psychology Program and Professor of Clinical Psychology. I will ask the deans in turn to go to the floor microphone on my left. Each dean will read the name of the doctoral candidate, the candidate's field of study, and the name of the faculty member who will participate in hooding the candidate. As this information is read, the candidate and the faculty member will meet at the X right below me on the riser where the candidates will be hooded by the interim provost and the faculty advisor. The program that you're holding lists the schools of the university in the order in which the schools were founded. But we need to depart from that arrangement in order of the deans because one of them is required to be at another ceremony. We will begin with the candidates for the Doctoral Philosophy degree in the School of Business, who will be hooded by the advocates of their dissertations. So may I invite Linda Livingstone, Dean of the School of Business, to come forward for the hooding of her graduates, whose names appear on page 30 of your program. Dean Linda Livingstone.
Anthony Paul Canizaro, Business Administration and International Business, being hooded by Professor Jennifer Spencer. Zhang Ming Fong, Business Administration and Finance, who will be hooded by Professor Shania Acha. Jin Keong Liu, Business Administration and Finance, being hooded by Professor Robert Savikas. Kevin Edward May, Business Administration and Management, hooded by Professor George Solomon. Ben Z. Shu, Business Administration and Finance, hooded by Professor Robert Van Order. Babak Zafari, Business Administration and Decision Sciences, hooded by Professor Rafiq Sawyer.
Okay. For the Columbian College of Arts and Sciences, Dean Ben Vinson.
Rebecca Abel, Professional Psychology, hooded by Professor Sarah Hedlund. Claudia Patricia Amendola, Professional Psychology, hooded by Professor Cherry Larmarsh. Miriam Amory, Professional Psychology, hooded by Professor Richard Ruth. Elizabeth Brock Bowen, Professional Psychology, hooded by Professor Cherry Marmosh. Jenna Casey, Professional Psychology, hooded by Professor Loring Ingram. Megan Len Davis, Professional Psychology, hooded by Professor Loring Ingram. Joshua Christian De Silva, Professional Psychology, hooded by Professor Paul Godot. Tasha Renee Dorsey, Professional Psychology, hooded by Professor Loring Ingram. Austin Christopher Graves, Professional Psychology, hooded by Professor Larney Gump. Leslie Ann Jimenez, Professional Psychology, hooded by Professor Cherry Marmosh. Alexis Stratemeyer Herman, Professional Psychology, hooded by Professor Sarah Hedlund. Jacqueline Dawn Johnson, Professional Psychology, hooded by Professor Paul Godot. Nora Isabel Kayat, Professional Psychology, hooded by Professor Paul Godot. Jennifer K. Lloyd, Professional Psychology, hooded by Professor Sarah Hedlund. Jacqueline Sarah Lopez, Professional Psychology, hooded by Professor Richard Ruth. Alexandra Marin Rajlan, Professional Psychology, hooded by Professor Sherry Marmosh. Benjamin Alex Morsa, Professional Psychology, hooded by Professor Richard Ruth. Niles Patrick Music, Professional Psychology, hooded by Professor Richard Ruth. Megan Aline Nesbitt, Professional Psychology, hooded by Professor Sherry Marmrosh. Jessica T. Pavlik, Professional Psychology, hooded by Professor Sarah Hedlund. Stephanie Gordon Posner, Professional Psychology, hooded by Professor Loring Ingram. Emily R. Ring, Professional Psychology, hooded by Professor Sherry Marmrosh. Tricia Nicolette Robinson, Professional Psychology, hooded by Professor Sarah Hedlund. Emily R. Rothbart, Professional Psychology, hooded by Professor Loring Ingram. Adelia Sabinstev, Professional Psychology, hooded by Professor Paul Gadot. Nisha Anjali Sachdev, Professional Psychology, hooded by Professor Larney Gump. Kelsey Salmon, Professional Psychology, hooded by Professor Sarah Hedlund. Sebastian Acevedo Mejia, Economics, hooded by Professor Arun Malik. Erin Marie Adkins, Chemistry, hooded by Professor Houston Miller. Sarah Eileen Alcala, Microbiology and Immunology, hooded by Professor Linda Whirling. Sahar Assad, Economics, hooded by Professor Stephen Smith. Justine Elizabeth Augeri, Public Policy and Administration, hooded by Professor Catherine Newcomer. Athena Balta, Public Policy and Administration, hooded by Professor Catherine Newcomer. Brett Thomas Barrowman, Political Science, hooded by Professor Henry Hale. Daniel Brocksterman, Economics, hooded by Professor Tony Yazer. Sun-Chin Chen, Economics, hooded by Professor Chao Wei. Song-Woo Choi, Public Policy and Administration, hooded by Professor Donna Enfeld. Robert Reed Coyne, Physics, hooded by Professor Frank Lee. Robert Matthew Darst, Economics, hooded by Professor Sumit Yoshi. Ana Maria del Rio Gonzalez, Applied Social Psychology, hooded by Professor Paul Poppin. Rachel Dinkus, Public Policy and Administration, hooded by Professor Catherine Newcomer. Megan Elizabeth Drury, American Studies, hooded by Professors Melanie McAllister and Gail Wald. Brian Arthur Dumbacher, Statistics, hooded by Professor Michael Larson. Laura El Sharif, Mathematics, hooded by Professor Lowell Abrams. Kelsey Flynn, History, hooded by Professor Linda Peck. Lindsay Marie Garvin, Microbiology and Immunology, hooded by Professor Linda Whirling. Marina Gandelsky, Economics, hooded by Professor Barry Chiswick. Mina Hong, Chemistry, hooded by Professor Henry Tang. Claire Elise Hopty, Microbiology and Immunology, hooded by Professor Linder Whirling. Garrett Nicholas Howardson, Industrial Organizational Psychology, hooded by Professor Tara Behring. Stephen C. Howell, Physics, hooded by Professor Shan-Wen Chu. Adam Stephen Hughes, Physics, hooded by Professor Mark Reeves. Miguel Agustini Racheta, Clinical Psychology, hooded by Professor Sharon Lambert. Heather Jameson, Molecular Medicine, hooded by Professor David Mendelwitz. Molly Marie Jacobs, Economics, hooded by Professor Don Parsons. Catherine Kine, American Studies, hooded by Professor Jen Nash. Michael Kessler, Chemistry, hooded by Professor Susan Gilmore. Ellen Kurtzman, Public Policy and Administration, hooded by Professor Donna Enfeld. Jason Chi-Ming Lau, Chemistry, hooded by Professor Stuart Lick. Shalia Mary Murphy Levant, Public Policy and Administration, hooded by Professor Donna Enfeld. Yixin Liu, Economics, hooded by Professor Tony Yazer. Shannon Davies Mankus, American Studies, hooded by Professor Melanie McAllister. It'll be good. Jennifer Elizabeth Marcerone, Clinical Psychology, hooded by Professor Cynthia Rohrbeck. Alex Mark, Political Science, hooded by Professor Paul Walbeck. Leah McReynolds, English, hooded by Professor Mariah Frawley. Carrie Nelson, Public Policy and Administration, hooded by Professor Catherine Newcomer. Christopher Nettles, Clinical Psychology, hooded by Professor George Howe. Karen Poole, Biological Sciences, hooded by Professor Catherine Forster. Tamar Susan Rabinowitz, History, hooded by Professor Tyler Anbinder. Gina Renee Rossetti, Clinical Psychology, hooded by Professor Jody Ganabon. Estelle Rosine Raimondo, Public Policy and Administration, hooded by Professor Catherine Newcomer. Araz Rafayat, Economics, hooded by Professor Sumit Yoshi. Catherine Kimball Rogers, Public Policy and Administration, hooded by Professor Donna Enfeld. Ahmed Mohammed Rostam, Economics, hooded by Professors Joseph Pelsman and Fred Eust. Robin Samuel, Chemistry, hooded by Professor Susan Gilmore. Jamie Benjamin Siebert, Industrial Organizational Psychology, hooded by Professor David Costanza. David Schaub, Mathematics, hooded by Professor Xiaofeng Ren. Sangamitra Singh, Biological Sciences, hooded by Professor Alexander Jeremic. Chen Song, Economics, hooded by Professor Arun Malik. Eric James Stoken, Public Policy and Administration, hooded by Professor Harold Woolman. Xian Sun, Statistics, hooded by Professor Xiaohai Li. Sonia Grace Tangavelu, Chemistry, hooded by Professor Christopher Cahill. Ana Cristina Torres Garcia, Public Policy and Administration, hooded by Professor Donna Enfeld. Courtney Wallen, Psychology and Cognitive Neuroscience, hooded by Professor Stephen Dopkins. Scott Wiener, Political Science, hooded by Professor Nathan Brown. Madeline Hayden Wells, Political Science, hooded by Professor Nathan Brown. Isan Yu, Economics, hooded by Professor Arun Malik. Laura Emanuela Zapatera, Clinical Psychology, hooded by Professor Jody Ganabin. Pan Pan Zhang, Statistics, hooded by Professor Hassan Mahmoud. Andrew Zipkin, Hominid Paleobiology, hooded by Professor Allison Brooks. Quanju, Statistics, hooded by Professor Zhao Hai Li.
Doctor of Philosophy, Farhad Gudazi, Mechanical and Aerospace Engineering, hooded by Professor Taiyang Li. How are you? Moses Taweha Adoko, Systems Engineering, hooded by Professors Thomas Mizuki and Sharam Sakani. Have your card. Yes. Farshad Adi, Electrical Engineering, hooded by Professor Suresh Subramaniam. Liana Algarin, Systems Engineering, hooded by Professors Thomas Mizuki and Sharam Sakani. Usama Abdurrahman B. Al-Gamili, Computer Science, hooded by Professor James Hahn. Congratulations. Faisal Abdullah S. Al-Sabi, Computer Science, hooded by Professor James Hahn. Sylvanus Agbiko Yawo Almivor, Civil and Environmental Engineering, hooded by Professor Majid Manzari. Amir Aslan Aslani, Electrical Engineering, hooded by Professor Edward De La Torre. How do you say your first name? Behailu. Behailu Belamo Bekara, Systems Engineering, hooded by Professor Royce Francis. Rolando A. Barrios Montero, Systems Engineering, hooded by Professor Sharam Sakani and Thomas Mizuki. How do you do the last one? Vignon. Isabel Elena Bignon, Systems Engineering, hooded by Professor Zoe Shanefather. Congratulations. Jonathan M. Branca, Systems Engineering, hooded by Professor Sharam Sakani and Thomas Mizuki. Bernardo Buenvejea, Systems Engineering, hooded by Professor Sharam Sakani and Thomas Mizuki. Cesar Casanova, Systems Engineering, hooded by Professor Sharam Sakani and Thomas Mizuki. Congratulations. Nathan Jonathan Castro, Mechanical and Aerospace Engineering, hooded by Professor Charles Garris. Damon Mark Conover, Electrical Engineering, hooded by Professor Murray Lowe. John Dargan, Systems Engineering, hooded by Professor Sharam Sakani and Thomas Mizuki. Andrew Stewart DeYoung, Mechanical and Aerospace Engineering, hooded by Professor Charles Garris. Wow, he's tall. Kevin Garfield Dobson, Computer Engineering, hooded by Professor Suresh Subramaniam. Jessica Donaldson, Systems Engineering, hooded by Professors Thomas Mizuki and Sharam Sakani. Alan Kent Gideon, Systems Engineering, hooded by Professor Sharam Sakani and Thomas Mizuki. Alan Guan, Biomedical Engineering, hooded by Professor Zhenyu Li. Wow. Guillaume. Mm-hmm. Do you say Joseph? Gina Guillaume Joseph. Systems Engineering, hooded by Professor Sharam Sakani and Thomas Mizuki. Sherika S. Holloman, Systems Engineering, hooded by Professor Sharam Sakani and Thomas Mizuki. Benjamin B. Holmes, Mechanical and Aerospace Engineering, hooded by Professor Grace Zhang. She's not around. Nargis Hossain, Systems Engineering, hooded by Professor Sharam Sakani and Thomas Mizuki. Carol Maggie Jim, Computer Science, hooded by Professor James Hahn. Subhash Kafle, Systems Engineering, hooded by Professor Sharam Sakani and Thomas Mizuki. Hongjuan Lee, Computer Science, hooded by Professor Susan Cheng. Joseph Nicholas Lucas, Mechanical and Aerospace Engineering, hooded by Professor Michael Kadar. Katrina Michelle Mansfield, Systems Engineering, hooded by Professor Sharam Sakani and Thomas Mizuki. Amy Brooke McClenny, Mechanical and Aerospace Engineering, hooded by Professor Philippe Bardet. Michelle Lynn Moore Miao, Systems Engineering, hooded by Professors Thomas Mizuki and Sharam Sakani. Ehsan Naranji, Systems Engineering, hooded by Professors Thomas Mizuki and Sharam Sakani. Efechuku Chidi Naduka, Systems Engineering, hooded by Professor Rene Van Dorp. David Keith Newsom, Computer Engineering, hooded by Professor Tarak El-Ghazawi. It's Nguyen. Khan Nguyen, Computer Science, hooded by Professor Hyung Ah Choi. Chidubem Arthur Wokoyi, Electrical Engineering, hooded by Professor Edward De La Torre. Okay. Paul Okwesilu, Systems Engineering, hooded by Professors Thomas Mizuki and Sharam Sakani. Congratulations. Christopher John Scalise, Systems Engineering, hooded by Professor Thomas Mizuki. Senghor. With a G, like that. Okay. Fatima Senghor, Systems Engineering, hooded by Professor Thomas Mizuki. Olivier Serre, Computer Engineering, hooded by Professor Tarak El-Ghazawi. Joel Slotton, Mechanical and Aerospace Engineering, hooded by Professor Michael Kadar. William A. Sprower, Engineering Management, hooded by Professor Thomas Mizuki. Christopher Conway Thompson, Electrical Engineering, hooded by Professor Volker Sorger. Yu Xiang, Electrical Engineering, hooded by Professor Tian Lan. Nima Sahadat, Systems Engineering, hooded by Professor Sharam Sakani and Thomas Mizuki. Se-Wai Wu, Mechanical and Aerospace Engineering, hooded by Professor Tai-Young Lee. How do you say it first name? Dayun Yan, Mechanical and Aerospace Engineering, hooded by Professor Michael Kadar. Zhen Zhang, Mechanical and Aerospace Engineering, hooded by Professor James Lee. Doctor of Science degree, Bradley D. Taylor, Computer Science, hooded by Professor James Hahn. Is that it?
For the Graduate School of Education and Human Development, Dean Michael Foyer.
Rebecca Maury Boyd, Curriculum and Instruction, hooded by Professor Anna Chameau. Let's have a little school spirit here. Remedine Obokol Jackie Tay, Educational Administration and Policy Studies, hooded by Professor Lionel Howard. Ethel Gardner Bullock, Human and Organizational Learning, hooded by Professor Neil Cholofsky. LaFay Anjoli Burris, Educational Administration and Policy Studies, hooded by Professor Mary Futrell. Melanie Jacobs Casper, Educational Administration and Policy Studies, hooded by Professor Jennifer Clayton. Vanessa Cogdell, Higher Education Administration, hooded by Professor Minsoon Kim. Nancy Joy Coleman, Human and Organizational Learning, hooded by Professor Michael Marquardt. Hi again. Betty Jean Collins, Educational Administration and Policy Studies, hooded by Professor Jennifer Clayton. Okay. Good. Deanna Duggan Conley, Special Education, hooded by Professor Joel Gomez. Bradley Joseph Coverdale, Higher Ed Administration, hooded by Professor William Dardick. Hi again. Roger Desmarais, Educational Administration and Policy Studies, hooded by Professor Kelly Sherrill Linkus. Donyal Dickey, Educational Administration and Policy Studies, hooded by Professor Abebeyu Deklesalasi. Name looks so familiar. Patricia Deneen, Curriculum and Instruction, hooded by Professor Colin Green. Gwendolyn Dorsey, Educational Administration and Policy Studies, hooded by Professor Jennifer Clayton. Hi. Got it. Lindsay Fielstedt, Human and Organizational Learning, hooded by Professor David Schwant.
Fiesel.
Angie K. Fiesel, Human and Organizational Learning, hooded by Professor Michael Marquardt. Courtney Lee Gavin, Educational Administration and Policy Studies, hooded by Professor Kelly Sherrill Linkus. Hey again. Thomas Patrick Golden, Human and Organizational Learning, hooded by Professor David Schwant. Never better. Whoops. Let's go, boys. Unzip it. Andrew Mark Goretsky, Higher Education Administration, hooded by Professor Rick Jakeman.
Hello.
Mary Ann Gorman, Special Education, hooded by Professor Juliana Tamans. Kimberly Ann Gray, Educational Administration and Policy Studies, hooded by Professor Linda Lemasters.
Greasy.
Vivian Elaine Greasy, Educational Administration and Policy Studies, hooded by Professor Kelly Sherrill Linkus. Cameron Brooks Griffith, Human and Organizational Learning, hooded by Professor Andrea Casey. Reina Anfone Guartico, Special Education, hooded by Professor Elizabeth Rice. Jamie Harnden, Educational Administration and Policy Studies, hooded by Professor Jennifer Clayton. Tom. Thomas Lee Harnish, Higher Education Administration, hooded by Professor Rick Jakeman. Lauren McHugh Hare, Educational Administration and Policy Studies, hooded by Professor Lionel Howard. Angela Lynn Hensey, Human and Organizational Learning, hooded by Professor Susan Swayze. Wendy Ann Hockersmith, Educational Administration and Policy Studies, hooded by Professor Susan Swayze. Jardine. Elliot Jardines, Human Resource Development, hooded by Professor Diana Burley.
Hello.
Liz Johnson, Educational Administration and Policy Studies, hooded by Professor Linda Lemasters.
Hey.
Gabrielle Julienne Molyneux, Higher Education Administration, hooded by Professor Min-Sun Kim. Mustafa B. Kalush, Educational Administration and Policy Studies, hooded by Professor Linda Lemasters. Hello. Got it. Kate Tucker Kennedy, Human and Organizational Learning, hooded by Professor Neil Cholofsky. James Marlowe Kirk, Educational Administration and Policy Studies, hooded by Professor Sharon Dannels. Brian Charles Koval, Higher Education Administration, hooded by Professor Robert Chernak. Aronza Major Labat, Educational Administration and Policy Studies, hooded by Professor Jennifer Clayton. Philip David Lurie, Educational Administration and Policy Studies, hooded by Professor Yaz Nakib. It's almost over. Is that Mashelli? Good. Megan Smith Mashelli, Educational Administration and Policy Studies, hooded by Professor Marion Robinson. Hi, how are you? Good to see you again. Timothy Michael Miller, Human and Organizational Learning, hooded by Professor Susan Swayze. Brian Kelly Morgan, Human and Organizational Learning, hooded by Professor David Schwant. Gregory Ray Murray, Human and Organizational Learning, hooded by Professor Neil Cholofsky. Helen Andrea Nixon, Educational Administration and Policy Studies, hooded by Professor Jennifer Clayton. Ryan M. Pemberton, Higher Ed Administration, hooded by Professor Robert Chernak. Kelly Harper Pumroy, Human and Organizational Learning, hooded by Professor Shaista Kilji. Oh, that's easy. Pangsuda Ratanamasmangol, Special Education, hooded by Professor Carol Kochar-Bryant. Alice Leona Riley, Educational Administration and Policy Studies, hooded by Professor Ababayu A. Tekleselasi. Arlen Ray Royalty, Human and Organizational Learning, hooded by Professor Michael Marquardt. Oh, thank you. You got a cheering section here? Oh, wait, we do too. Okay, here we go. Sarah Sarr, Educational Administration and Policy Studies, hooded by Professor Abe Teklesolasi. Anne-Marie Kestner-Smith, Educational Administration and Policy Studies, hooded by Professor Marion Robinson. Ralph Thomas Soule, Human and Organizational Learning, hooded by Professor Ellen Goldman. Mary Taylor, Human and Organizational Learning, hooded by Professor Andrea Casey. I think we can do this. Eric Robert Terzuolo, Higher Ed Administration, hooded by Professor Roger Whitaker. Matthew T. Trainum, Human and Organizational Learning, headed by Professor Andrea Casey. Sorry, we changed our mind. Amy Elizabeth Vanden Bogart, Curriculum and Instruction, hooded by Professor Pat Tate. Come on, bring it over. Bryce Walker, Special Education, hooded by Professor Michael Castleberry. Brandon Grant Wolf, Educational Administration and Policy Studies, hooded by Professor Lionel Howard. It's okay. Is that Wigmans or Weigmans? Martha Sue Weigmans, Higher Ed Administration, hooded by Professor Rick Jakeman. Pauline Margaret Younts, Educational Administration and Policy Studies, hooded by Professor Lionel Howard. Eric Peter Zabigalski, Human and Organizational Learning, hooded by Professor Michael Marquardt. Deanna Nicole Kaur, Counseling, hooded by Professor Sam Steen. There you are. Emily Elizabeth Reich Foster, Counseling, hooded by Professor Richard Lanthier. Hey, good to see you. Karod Asan France, Counseling, hooded by Professor Sam Steen. Holly A. Hargreaves Cormany, Counseling, hooded by Professor Sam Steen. This is it. Stacy Lara Carpen, Counseling, hooded by Professor Sam Steen. Megan Joan Doughty Shane, Counseling, hooded by Professor Sylvia Murata Walters. I got it. Yeah. Elena Alexandra Wasserman Stokes, Counseling, hooded by Professor Sylvia Murata Walters. You're it, man. Robert John Zeglin, Counseling, hooded by Professor Ken Hergenrather.
For the Milken Institute of Public Health, Dean Lynn Goldman.
The School of Public Health, Jasmine Wallace Bim, Doctor of Public Health, Health Behavior, hooded by Dr. Karen McDonald. Sake Malek Cho, Public Health, Health Policy, hooded by Dr. Leighton Koo. Zaida Figueroa Correa, Environmental and Occupational Health, hooded by Dr. Melissa Perry. Mitsuaki Hirai, Global Health, hooded by Dr. J. Graham. Elena Lumby, Health Behavior, hooded by Dr. Monique Turner. Natasha Nagaraj, Health Behavior, hooded by Dr. Amita Vyas. Hi. Emily Pekka, Global Health, hooded by Dr. John Sandberg. Tampa. Tova Tampa, Global Health, hooded by Dr. Amira Rose. Weston Williams, PhD in Epidemiology, hooded by Dr. Manya Magnus and Dr. Patrick Sullivan. That's it.
For the School of Nursing, Dean Pamela Jeffries.
Yuchiche Amajoy. Nursing practice and education, hooding, will be Dr. Deborah Chapa. Jenny L. Barnhouse, Doctorate of Nursing Practice, hooded by Professor Joyce Polsini. Tara Marie Brander, Doctorate of Nursing Practice, hooded by Professor Pearl Zhu. Congratulations. Carol Fritz Brongart, Doctor of Nursing Practice, hooded by Professor Pearl Zhu. Bridget Ann Burke, Doctor of Nursing Practice and Education, hooded by Professor Kathy Gazzetta. Congratulations. Linda Gale Kassar, Doctor of Nursing Practice and Executive Leadership, hooded by Professor Stephanie Wright. Kathy Marie Kavanaugh, Doctor of Nursing Practice, hooded by Professor Pearl Zhao. Corinne Cochran, Doctor of Nursing Practice, Healthcare Quality, hooded by Professor Brenda Scheingold. Congratulations. Adrian Cole Williams, Doctor of Nursing Practice, Healthcare Quality, hooded by Professor Pearl Zhu. Joanne Fitzgerald Conroy, Doctor of Nursing Practice, hooded by Professor Debbie Chapa. Jennifer Lynn Cooper, Doctor of Nursing Practice and Education, hooded by Professor Debbie Chapa. Tomika Charmaine Dowling, Doctor of Nursing Practice, hooded by Professor Brenda Scheingold. Sandra M. Gooden, Doctor of Nursing Practice and Healthcare Quality, hooded by Professor Brenda Scheingold. Congratulations. Linda H. Hevenar, Doctor of Nursing Practice, Healthcare Quality, hooded by Professor Brenda Scheingold. Lakeisha Watkins Hicks, Doctor of Nursing Practice, Healthcare Quality, hooded by Professor Brenda Scheingold. Anne Glennon Hoffman, Doctor of Nursing Practice, hooded by Professor Pearl Zhu. Rose Ann Indelicato, Doctor of Nursing Practice, hooded by Professor Debbie Chapa. Kempen. Betty Ann Kempen, Doctor of Nursing Practice, hooded by Professor Debbie Chapa. Deborah Ann Costco, Doctorate of Nursing Practice, hooded by Professor Debbie Chapa. Congratulations. Wendy Jane Lee, Doctor of Nursing Practice, hooded by Professor Lori Posey. Congratulations. Got a fan club. Today's the day. Lori J. Lerman, Doctor of Nursing Practice, hooded by Dr. Stephen Lerman and Dr. Jean Johnson. Yeah. Anne Marie Madden, Doctor of Nursing Practice, hooded by Deborah Chapa. Oh.
Are we doing that too? What was the number on that?
Oh, how are you? Congratulations. Marino.
I thought you said ode to joy. You mean ode to joy. Yeah,
Okay.
it's not the same.
Lori Jane Marino, Doctor of Nursing Practice, Executive Leadership, hooded by Professor Mary Jane Schumann. And it's Bama Ruth Bayou. Bama Ruth Bayou, Doctor of Nursing Practice and Nursing Education, hooded by Professor Brenda Scheingold. Terry Naru, Doctor of Nursing Practice, hooded by Professor Kathy Gazzetta. Easy name. Christopher James Parker, Doctor of Nursing Practice, hooded by Professor Debbie Chapa. Lisa Ann Preston, Doctorate of Nursing Practice, hooded by Professor Kathy Gazzetta. Congratulations. I'm the boss. Julie Annette Sample, Doctorate of Nursing Practice, hooded by Professor Pearl Zhu. Congratulations. Amy Elizabeth Schuler, Doctor of Nursing Practice and Palliative Care, hooded by Professor Beverly Lunsford. Easy. Raymond N. Smith, Doctor of Nursing Practice and Executive Leadership, hooded by Professor Linda Briggs. How are you? Jason Tate, Doctorate of Nursing Practice, Executive Leadership, hooded by Professor Mary Jean Schumann. Etz Janette, Doctor of Nursing Practice, hooded by Professor Kathy Gazzetta. Margaret Hadro-Vinsky, Doctorate of Nursing Practice, hooded by Professor Christine Pence.
Congratulations, graduates. To conclude our ceremony, I want to thank the audience for being here today and also to thank you for the support you have provided the graduates over the years. I also want to invite everyone to attend a reception on the first floor of Duquesne Hall, which is right across the street over there, right after this ceremony. Please join Millicent Scarlett in singing your alma mater. The words are on page 37 of your program, and please remain standing for the academic recession. Will the audience please rise?